Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I'm going to share my screen so that we can just flip through some slides quickly. So, pleasure to be here. Wanted to talk to you guys about how, if we want to solve the problem of workforce equity, we really have to start changing systems and not relying on changing human minds. Uh, as a cognitive neuroscientist, I studied the brain for a long time. And one of the things we know about it is that the brain really has two primary systems, a thinking fast and a thinking slow system. Both are evolutionarily adaptive. However, system one thinking can become quite problematic in hiring because it underpins what's called unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is when you're making fast decisions without really following patterns, without really thinking through these decisions. And the reason it's problematic in hiring is because it leads to discrimination, unintended discrimination, but very well documented discrimination. So there's a standard in hiring called the 4/5 rule. It means that if you select 8 of one group, you should select no fewer, 10 of one group, you should select no fewer than 8 of another group. And what we see with a meta-analysis of 30 years of callback studies of hiring using human resume review is that it fails the 4/5 rule. So what this means is that they tested human recruiters and sent them the same exact resume, but with a different name. So instead of John Williams, it was Jamal Williams to test the effects of ethnicity. And for every 10 interviews that the exact same resume with John as a name gets, Jamal is only getting 7 interviews with the exact same resume. So unfortunately, unconscious bias remains a thing in the in present day and has not diminished in any way, despite the fact that we all want to have a more equitable future. So we cannot rely on debiasing the human brain because all studies of unconscious bias training have found it to be ineffective. So what does actually work? That's what I'm kind of here to talk about today. There was a study put out that looked at 4 different things that actually work in increasing diversity and reducing bias. So one is just having metrics and goals, just like you would for any other business process, have some metrics and goals that you're trying to achieve and track those metrics and goals. Second is transparency around these metrics and goals. There needs to be clear understanding of how these goals are being met and what places are being, places where these goals are being achieved versus not. And then third is accountability. So who is accountable for achieving these goals? So all of these things are fairly straightforward. But the fourth thing that was clear from this report was that unbiased technology can actually prove effective. And so there's sort of hallmarks of unbiased technology. One is that you're using largely unbiased data. The second is that you're auditing your algorithms for this legal definition of bias, meaning that your algorithms are passing the 4/5 rule, both before you deploy them and afterwards, that you're providing some level of transparency and adhering to standards. And so what we see once we deploy audited technology, sorry for the typo on the slide, I should say Pymetrics audited AI, is that it can actually work much better than what we see with human resume review. So we were able to show that looking at 3/4 of 700,000 candidates that had passed through our system, that not only were we accomplishing an impact ratio that was significantly better than human resume review, but we're almost at parity. So we're not quite at parity yet, and that obviously is the goal. But essentially, what I'd like to put forth to you is that audited AI, Pymetrics, and other systems, there are absolutely other systems that exist that do this, where you're testing the algorithms to ensure that they are meeting compliance with legal standards and going beyond that, can actually do much better than human resume review in putting forth qualified African American and other disadvantaged groups. And certainly we should be looking for hallmarks of audited technology rather than simply thinking that our current processes will work better if we just try harder to be, less biased in our decision-making processes. So I want to leave you with that there is tremendous hope, I think, for technology, transparent and audited technology, to actually do better than the human brain. I think humans are wonderful. The human brain is a wonderful thing, but I think it has its limitations. And I think that when we move away from this idea that unbiasing the human brain is the right way to go and look towards metrics, accountability, transparency, and audited technology as a solution, we'll definitely be far more able to accomplish our goals of equity in the workforce. So thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate any comments or questions.